You arrive in Timbuktu on a quiet afternoon when the golden sunlight falls lazily across the mud-brick buildings, illuminating the dusty streets with a calm, almost sleepy warmth. The air carries a faint scent of sand and clay, mixed with the earthy aroma of manuscripts, the smell of old paper, ink, and the faint tank of dried leather. Here, in this desert city at the edge of the Sahara, life unfolds slowly, measured by the rhythm of writing and reading, rather than the clamor of markets or the bustle of traders arriving from distant lands. Your destination is a small, unassuming workshop tucked behind a low wall of sun-baked bricks. Inside, the room is cool and dim, with shelves stacked high with parchment and carefully stored manuscripts. This is where scribes spend their days, meticulously copying texts that hold centuries of knowledge. The walls are lined with shelves, each a silent witness to the patient labor of men and women who have devoted their lives to the written word. Here, time seems to stretch, each moment elongated by the meticulous work of copying line after line, letter after letter. You watch as a scribe dips a thin reed pen into black ink, careful not to disturb the delicate consistency that has been prepared over hours. The ink glistens briefly as it touches the cream-colored surface of the parchment, soaking in slowly. Each letter must be precise, each stroke deliberate. One misplaced mark could mar the text, and scribes have long been trained to see the smallest errors, to correct them with delicate care, or, in some cases, start the page anew. There is a rhythm to their work, almost like a meditative chant, a quiet repetition that fills the room with a calm energy. The scribe's attire is simple linen robes, worn at the edges from years of movement, and a modest cap to keep the hair out of the ink. There is no hurry here, only a constant, gentle motion. He pauses occasionally to read the lines aloud, softly to himself, checking the rhythm of the text, ensuring that every word is faithful to the original. There is a sense of responsibility here that is almost sacred. Each manuscript is not merely words on parchment, it is a vessel of knowledge, a bridge to past wisdom, a treasure whose value far exceeds its material form. Around the room, there are other scribes, each absorbed in their own manuscripts. One copies a text on mathematics, carefully transcribing formulas and diagrams that might seem mundane to an outsider, yet represent years of careful thought and accumulated knowledge. Another works on religious texts, writing passages in elaborate script that curls and loops with disciplined elegance. The air is filled with quiet, scratching sounds, the faint rustle of parchment, and the occasional sigh as a scribe leans back and stretches, aware that fatigue can easily lead to mistakes. Yet, even in this slow, methodical environment, there is an unspoken camaraderie, a shared dedication to preserving the intellect of generations. You notice the careful organization of materials. Parchment is stored flat in wooden boxes, each sheet selected for its smoothness and durability. Ink is prepared from soot and gum arabic, mixed with water in exact proportions to achieve the desired consistency. Even the placement of the pens matters. Each scribe has a favorite reed, sharpened to a precise point. These are the details of daily life that might seem trivial to someone passing through Timbuktu in haste, yet they define the rhythm of work and the quality of the manuscripts produced. This attention to minutiae is what allows knowledge to survive page after page, century after century. Occasionally, a student enters the room carrying a small bundle of parchment. The scribe looks up, nods, and gestures for the student to sit nearby. The lesson is quiet, almost imperceptible. The student traces letters in sand, practices the correct formation of words, and then moves on to copying small passages. It is a slow, deliberate education, one that emphasizes patience, discipline, and the understanding that knowledge is accumulated gradually, one careful step at a time. Mistakes are part of the learning process, but they are corrected with quiet instruction and gentle guidance. There is no rush, no external pressure, only the unfolding of skill through repetition outside. The city moves at a different pace. Caravans pass through the dusty streets, traders shouting prices, merchants displaying colorful cloths and spices. But inside these workshops, time is measured differently. Hours stretch like liquid, and the work of writing feels eternal. Each scribe is aware of the fragility of their labor. They know that a sudden gust of wind, a careless hand, or the slow decay of materials could erase years of careful work. Yet they persevere, because the preservation of knowledge is a task worth the slow effort. And the quiet monotony is a form of devotion. You might find yourself wondering how scribes maintain such focus day after day. Yet the answer is in the very nature of their work. Writing by hand demands attention, but it also allows for reflection. As the pen glides across the parchment, thoughts form slowly, ideas settle into their proper order. There is a rhythm, a meditative quality that connects the scribe to the authors of the texts they copy, to the generations who will read them long after the desert winds have shifted the sands outside. It is a connection to time itself, made tangible through ink and parchment. Meals are simple. A scribe may pause for a bowl of millet porridge or a small piece of bread, sometimes accompanied by dates or a few figs. These breaks are quiet, solitary affairs, often taken at the edge of the workshop where the sunlight filters through narrow windows. Conversations are minimal. The focus remains on the manuscripts. Even social interactions are subdued, measured, and respectful of the slow, deliberate pace of work. There is a sense that every moment must serve the purpose of study or creation, and distractions are kept to a minimum. The life of a scribe is one of careful balance between labor, sustenance, and reflection. As afternoon fades into evening, the light in the workshop softens. Shadows stretch across the floor, and the manuscripts take on a warmer hue. The scribes do not rush to finish their work. Instead, they allow the day to close gently with the quiet satisfaction of progress, however incremental. Each line completed is a small victory, each page a testament to endurance and patience. And yet, even as you watch this serene diligence, a question lingers in the air. What happens when the manuscripts leave the scribe's hands, carried off by traders or scholars, to face the harsh conditions of the desert? Will these careful records survive the tests of time, or will some be lost to the elements, their knowledge fading into silence? This uncertainty is the quiet tension of the scribe's life-to-awareness, that despite all care and effort, the survival of knowledge is never guaranteed. And so, the day closes, not with a dramatic flourish, but with a patient hope, a quiet persistence. and the ongoing question of what the future holds for the words inscribed with such devotion. The ink dries slowly, the parchment rests, and the scribes leave the workshop with the evening call to prayer drifting through the streets, carrying with them the silent weight of centuries. The following morning arrives with a gentle heat that seeps through the cracks of the mud brick walls. Timbuktu's streets are empty, save for the occasional donkey or the soft shuffle of a barefoot child carrying water from the nearby wells. Inside the scribe's workshop, the air feels cooler, as if the walls themselves are holding the memory of centuries of careful labor. You notice that the shelves, now fully visible in the morning light, hold manuscripts of all shapes and sizes, thick, bound tomes with leather spines, folded sheets tied with delicate cords, and loose pages stored flat in boxes. Each item has a story, a lineage of authors and scribes, travelers and scholars, whose work has converged here in this quiet corner of the Sahara. You take note of the variety of texts. Some are religious, containing passages from the Quran or interpretations of sacred law. Others are scientific, detailing astronomical observations, medical remedies, or mathematical calculations. There are histories, chronicling local rulers and distant kingdoms, and even poetry, capturing the cadence of life and thought in the region. For a modern visitor, these might appear as dusty relics, but to a scribe, each manuscript represents a living dialogue, a conversation across generations that must be handled with care. The act of copying is not mere repetition, it is a continuation of this conversation, a chance to participate in a legacy of human knowledge. The scribe you observe today is named Musa. He is in his late 40s, with a calm demeanor and a steady hand. Years of copying have left faint ink stains on his fingers, and his eyes, though bright, carry the quiet fatigue of long hours hunched over parchment. Musa begins his day with a ritual, inspecting his ink, sharpening his reed pens, and selecting a clean sheet of parchment. There is a deliberate slowness to his movements, a mindfulness that is as much spiritual as it is practical. Each step ensures that mistakes are minimized, that the work produced will meet the exacting standards required by both tradition and his own conscience. Musa's manuscript for the day is a treatise on astronomy, written centuries earlier by a scholar whose name has survived only in the faded ink at the margin. As he begins to copy, he pauses frequently, consulting his notes, measuring the spacing of lines, and ensuring that diagrams are accurately reproduced. The symbols of stars and planets are tiny, precise, and each must be carefully aligned with accompanying text. You realize that the work is almost painfully slow, yet it embodies a meticulous intelligence, a discipline that values accuracy above all else. Mistakes here are not easily corrected. One wrong symbol could mislead future scholars, altering the understanding of celestial movements for generations to come. Beyond the meticulous copying, Musa is aware of the fragility of the manuscripts themselves. The desert air, though dry and preserving in some ways, can also be treacherous. Humidity shifts unexpectedly after rare rains, causing parchment to warp. Tiny insects burrow through the edges of older pages, and the binding of leather can crack under fluctuating temperatures. Musa handles each sheet with gentleness, supporting it with both hands, occasionally adjusting it on the table to prevent stress on the fibers. He often works with a small cloth to dust off microscopic grains of sand that might scratch the delicate surface. These precautions seem excessive to an outsider, yet they are vital. The survival of centuries of human thought depends on such painstaking attention. As the morning deepens into midday, other figures enter the workshop. Students come to observe, copying small sections themselves under the watchful eyes of Musa and his colleagues. There is an economy of words here. Instructions are brief and precise. The emphasis is on observation, repetition, and the cultivation of patience. One young student struggles to form a particularly complex character, and Musa leans over, gently guiding the reed pen. He whispers a quiet encouragement, almost inaudible, except to those immediately nearby. This whispered guidance, repeated countless times across the ages, is part of the continuity of knowledge, a chain linking teacher to student, scribe to scholar, century to century. Occasionally, a messenger arrives with news of manuscripts from outside Timbuktu. Traders, often moving along the Niger River or across the Sahara, bring parchments from distant cities, Marrakesh, Gao, or even farther. Musa inspects each carefully, noting the condition, origin, and subject matter. Some are intact, others partially damaged, but all are precious. The manuscripts arrive in bundles, wrapped in cloth or leather, and sometimes accompanied by short letters detailing the provenance. These arrivals are moments of excitement for the scribes, brief departures from the slow monotony of copying, yet even these tasks demand attention. A torn corner, a smudge, or a missing word could change the interpretation of a text. So care is exercised at every stage. You notice that the work of a scribe is not confined to copying alone. Musa is also a conservator, a cataloger, and sometimes even a negotiator. He ensures that manuscripts are stored safely, inventoried meticulously, and occasionally lent to scholars who travel from distant lands. There is a delicate balance between sharing knowledge and preserving it. One cannot risk the loss of rare texts, yet the purpose of manuscripts is ultimately to be read and understood. It is a tension that defines much of the scribe's daily life, the quiet management of treasures that are both fragile and invaluable. In addition to the manuscripts themselves, Musa and his colleagues maintain a network of local knowledge. They are aware of regional events, political shifts, and the movements of traders and scholars. Timbuktu is not isolated. It is connected through rivers, caravan routes, and scholarly correspondence to cities across West Africa and beyond. Manuscripts travel, sometimes slowly, sometimes in perilous conditions, yet their content shapes distant communities. The scribe's role extends beyond the workshop. He is a link in a broader system that ensures the flow of ideas across space and time. And in this knowledge network, even the quietest details, a marginal note, a corrected spelling, a smudge of ink can carry significance. Afternoons in the workshop are slower, the sun casting long shadows across the floor. Musa often pauses to drink water or simply rest his eyes. There is a sense that the day is measured not by external events, but by the completion of lines, pages, and sections of text. Time stretches and contracts with the work, and each moment is absorbed into the slow accumulation of progress. Outside, the desert wind stirs, moving sand across the streets and sending a few stray grains into the open windows. Inside, the scribes continue their quiet labor, unaffected by the outside world, devoted to the endurance of words rather than the passage of hours. And yet, even as you observe this calm persistence, a question remains, hovering in the air. What will become of these manuscripts in the centuries to come? Will they survive the march of time, preserved by careful hands and cool storage? Or will some succumb to neglect, war, or the shifting sands that threaten every structure in this city? The answer is uncertain, and this uncertainty shadows every decision a scribe like Musa makes, informing the meticulous care with which he handles every sheet, every inked line, every carefully drawn diagram. It is in this quiet tension, the hope that knowledge will endure against the slow but inevitable pressures of time, that the life of a scribe finds both purpose and meaning. And so, as the afternoon fades and shadows lengthen across Timbuktu's streets, the workshop remains a sanctuary, a place where patience, dedication, and the belief in the permanence of ideas are measured not by dramatic events, but by the steady, deliberate motion of a reed pen on parchment. Evening falls over Timbuktu with a quiet inevitability, the sun descending behind low mud brick walls, turning the city into a sea of soft ochre and shadow. In the workshop, the light shifts, filtering through narrow windows and casting elongated shapes across the worn wooden tables. Musa pauses, placing his reed pen carefully on the inkstone, and leans back, stretching his shoulders after a long day of labor. The manuscripts he has copied today, thick tomes on astronomy and thin treatises on grammar, lie neatly stacked on the table, their pages aligned with care, ready to be stored or sent to scholars who might carry them across the desert or along the river. The final moments of the day are filled with quiet reflection. Musa moves deliberately, inspecting each manuscript once more. He touches the edges of the parchment lightly, as if sensing the history embedded. Some pages bear the delicate annotations of earlier scribes, notes in faded ink that speak of centuries of observation, debate, and learning. Each manuscript is a palimpsest of human thought, a testament not only to the original author, but to every hand that has preserved, copied, and cared for it along the way. It is a tangible connection to the past, and Musa, like his predecessors, is its custodian. The occasional whisper of wind outside is the only sound apart from the faint rustle of paper as Musa organizes his tools for the next day. You can see in his actions a rhythm cultivated over decades, dipping pens into ink, straightening pages, and aligning manuscripts with care. Every movement is deliberate, every gesture part of a larger ritual of preservation. It is not a dramatic labor, but a slow, steady devotion that bridges generations. And in this devotion, there is a sense of continuity, a silent assurance that the knowledge contained within these manuscripts might outlast even the desert itself. But the desert is unforgiving. Musa is acutely aware of the fragility of his work. A sudden rainstorm could warp parchment. A careless hand could smudge the ink. A caravan lost to the shifting sands could carry away centuries of scholarship. These dangers are never far from his mind, and yet it is precisely this awareness that makes every careful stroke meaningful. Each line he writes is both a contribution to knowledge and an act of hope. a small but significant gesture against the inexorable forces of time and decay. The scribe's life is defined not by heroism, but by endurance, the quiet, persistent effort to safeguard human understanding. Occasionally, Musa reflects on the scholars who will one day read these texts. Perhaps a young student in a distant city will study his copied treatise on astronomy, discovering patterns in the stars. Or a scholar will reference his careful transcription of a legal text to resolve a dispute. These possibilities lend purpose to the meticulous labor, transforming what might seem mundane into something deeply significant. Every minor detail, the exact angle of a letter, the spacing between lines, the clarity of a diagram carries weight, because it may influence how the knowledge is understood, interpreted, and used centuries later. Outside the workshop, Timbuktu streets have emptied. Traders and merchants have returned home. Children have ceased their play, and the city settles into a calm that mirrors the quiet within the manuscript rooms. Occasionally, a distant call to prayer floats across the desert, punctuating the night with a rhythm that seems as old as the city itself. Musa listens, momentarily closing his eyes, aware that his labor is part of a larger pattern, a network of knowledge, belief, and daily life that stretches across time and space. The manuscripts he has tended are more than objects. They are vessels of civilization, tiny beacons of human thought in a fragile, ever-changing world. You notice, as you watch Musa work, that his life, though repetitive, is profoundly connected to others. Every scribe before him, every scholar who came to study these texts, every traveler who carried them across perilous deserts have contributed to this quiet continuity. And yet, despite centuries of careful copying and preservation, there is always uncertainty. Manuscripts might vanish, be lost in fires, floods, or wars. The survival of knowledge is never guaranteed, and this precariousness imparts a certain gravity to the scribe's otherwise tranquil existence. Each day, each page, is an act of both faith and endurance. Before leaving, Musa carefully closes a bundle of completed manuscripts, tying them with a strip of soft leather. He places them on a shelf designated for shipment, where they will wait until a caravan or scholar comes to carry them to distant libraries or other workshops. As he does so, you can sense a quiet satisfaction in his demeanor. He has done his part to preserve knowledge, to maintain the chain of human thought, to ensure that the words of the past remain accessible to the future. It is not a glamorous task, nor one that draws attention. Yet its significance is immense. And then, as night deepens, you are left with the enduring question that shadows every scribe's life. What will become of these manuscripts after he is gone? Will they survive the centuries, guiding scholars, inspiring thought, and connecting distant generations? Or will some be lost, leaving gaps in the chain of human understanding? The answer is unknown, resting somewhere between hope and the inexorable flow of time. It is in this uncertainty, the tension between fragility and endurance, that the true significance of a scribe's life emerges. Musa extinguishes the small oil lamp, leaving the workshop in darkness. The manuscripts rest silently on their shelves, safe for the night, each one a testament to patience, diligence, and the quiet devotion of countless scribes before him. And as you step outside, the desert stretches endlessly under the starlit sky, vast and silent, yet full of the invisible threads of knowledge carried across time and space. The work of a scribe is never dramatic, never immediate, yet it endures in subtle, powerful ways, shaping the way humanity understands its past and navigates its future. And perhaps, somewhere in the quiet desert night, the manuscripts themselves whisper, carrying the hope that the labor of today will echo in the minds of tomorrow. The morning air is unusually cool in Timbuktu, a gentle reprieve from the usual desert heat that clings to the streets like a persistent shadow. In a small, dimly lit workshop, a freshly copied manuscript rests atop a wooden table. Its pages are slightly curled, the ink still glistening faintly, a testament to the scribe's careful work. This manuscript, containing a treatise on medicine and natural remedies, is about to embark on a journey that few observers will ever notice, yet one that exemplifies the quiet drama of knowledge moving across time and space. A young apprentice, Idris has been entrusted with the task of preparing the manuscript for travel. He carefully wraps the pages in soft cloth, ensuring that no grain of sand can sneak into the folds and damage the delicate parchment. Each binding is tied with a strip of leather, fastened tightly enough to hold the manuscript secure, but gently enough to prevent creasing. Idris's movements are slow and deliberate, for he knows that the survival of the manuscript depends on these small precautions. Even in such seemingly minor acts, there is a profound responsibility, a duty to safeguard the labor of the scribe and the knowledge contained within. Outside the workshop, Timbuktu hums with activity. Traders prepare their caravans for the journey across the desert. Camels are loaded with sacks of salt, cloth, and rare metals, and their handlers adjust the loads meticulously to prevent imbalance. Amid these more tangible goods, the manuscript is placed carefully atop a stack of other items, its value immeasurable but invisible to anyone not trained to recognize it. This juxtaposition knowledge carried alongside everyday trades typical of Timbuktu, where ideas and objects coexist on the same desert routes, both subject to the whims of nature, chance, and human care. The caravan begins its journey just after noon, moving slowly along the well-worn paths that trace ancient trade routes. The camels step cautiously over uneven terrain, their padded feet sinking slightly into the sand with each measured stride. The manuscript, cushioned in cloth and leather, shifts slightly with the movement of the pack, and Idris frequently checks its position, adjusting its placement to prevent damage. The desert is merciless in small ways. A sudden gust of wind can carry abrasive sand into the folds of a bundle. A moment of carelessness can result in irreparable tears. Each precaution is an act of vigilance against the imperceptible forces of erosion and time along the route. The caravan passes small settlements, clusters of mud brick houses dotting the edge of dry riverbeds. Merchants wave to each other from a distance, sharing greetings in quiet tones that carry across the dunes. Travelers rely on knowledge as much as provisions maps, oral directions, and the collective memory of trade routes all serve to guide the caravan. For the manuscript, this journey is a slow, deliberate dance with these forces. While human hands carry it carefully, nature imposes constant, subtle challenges that must be managed with attention and foresight. Idris observes the desert closely. noting landmarks, changes in the wind, and the behavior of the camels. The manuscript is not his only concern. It is his responsibility to anticipate hazards, from shifting dunes to the sudden scarcity of water at distant wells. Each night, the caravan halts near an oasis or a shaded depression in the sand. Campfires flicker, providing warmth and light, but they also present a risk. Sparks can travel with the wind, and fire has a destructive intimacy with parchment that no ink can resist. Idris wraps the manuscript more tightly at these times, placing it away from the heat and light, his fingers lingering on the soft cloth as though offering protection through touch alone. The manuscript itself is surprisingly resilient. Its parchment has been carefully prepared, and the ink, a mixture of soot, gum arabic, and water, has been applied with a skilled hand to resist smudging. Yet, for all its preparation, it is fragile in the face of repeated handling and environmental stress. Each fold and turn of the page during inspection or transit is an opportunity for wear, a subtle test of its endurance. Idris understands this deeply. He treats each movement as a potential peril, adjusting, cushioning, and stabilizing whenever necessary. During the long days of travel, conversation is minimal. The desert encourages quiet observation. The only sounds are the steady footsteps of the camels, the occasional commands of the caravan leaders, and the whisper of wind through sparse tufts of grass and scattered rocks. This monotony is punctuated by brief moments of human concern: a camel stumbling over loose sand, the discovery of a shallow well with sufficient water, or the careful realignment of cargo to maintain balance. Through all these actions, the manuscript continues its silent journey, unaffected by the bustle, but dependent on the vigilance of those around it. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, painting the sand in shades of burnt gold and muted amber, Idris reflects on the larger purpose of this journey. The manuscript will not remain in Timbuktu. It is destined for a private library in a distant city, a repository where scholars may one day study its contents. The knowledge contained within its pages, the remedies, observations, and insights is intended to transcend place and time. The journey itself is part of this mission, ensuring that ideas travel as far as possible, surviving not only the physical challenges of the desert, but also the unpredictable tides of human attention and care. And yet, as Idris watches the twilight deepen, he cannot help but wonder, what will happen if the manuscript does not reach its destination? If lost to theft, fire, or decay, the knowledge it carries may vanish, leaving gaps in a chain that spans generations. Will the remedies documented within be forgotten, the careful observations dismissed, or will some other scribe, unaware of this manuscript's origin, recreate the same insights centuries later? The uncertainty hangs in the cooling air, a reminder that even the most deliberate efforts to preserve knowledge are subject to forces beyond human control. This is the paradox of the manuscript's journey. It is both fragile and enduring, dependent on human care, yet resilient enough to survive centuries if treated properly. Its fate is intertwined with the desert, the caravan, and the people entrusted with its safety. Each step taken across the dunes, each careful adjustment of cargo, and each night spent under the stars is a quiet testament to human persistence in the face of uncertainty. The manuscript moves forward, its story interwoven with the rhythm of the desert and the dedication of those who guide it, carrying within it the silent promise of survival or the quiet risk of loss as the caravan settles for the night. The manuscript rests securely among the padded bundles of goods. The desert stretches endlessly around the camp, dark and expansive, yet filled with subtle life. Idris glances at the small flame of the campfire, and then at the carefully wrapped manuscript, aware that this journey is only beginning. The road ahead is long, uncertain, and full of challenges that cannot be predicted. And in this moment, you, the observer, are left with the thought that the preservation of knowledge is rarely dramatic or immediate. It is a slow, careful, and fragile process, reliant on human diligence and the unpredictable currents of the world. What will become of this manuscript as it travels farther from Timbuktu? Will it survive the elements, the errors of travelers, or the vagaries of history? Or will it vanish quietly, leaving behind only the faintest trace of its existence, a whisper of knowledge lost to time? The caravan presses onward, moving through the vast expanse of the Sahara, where the horizon blurs under heat waves during the day and crystallizes into sharp starlight at night. The manuscript, carefully wrapped and secured, rests atop the central pack of camels, cushioned by layers of cloth and leather. Its journey, though slow and quiet, is far from secure. The desert, with its shifting dunes, sudden gusts of wind, and unyielding sun, tests both the caravan and the precious knowledge it carries. Yet the manuscript endures, its survival dependent on the vigilance and foresight of those who accompany it. Idris, who has taken responsibility for the manuscript, walks alongside the camels for most of the day, adjusting straps, ensuring balance, and checking that the pages remain undisturbed. Occasionally, he pauses to observe the desert landscape, noting landmarks such as jagged rock formations, sparse shrubs, and the skeletal remains of older caravans long since abandoned. Every feature is a point of reference, a guide for safe passage across a terrain where a single misstep can mean the loss of weeks of travel or even life. Within this context, the manuscript becomes more than paper and ink. It is a silent companion, reliant on human perception and care. Along the route, the caravan encounters a small cluster of nomadic traders. These interactions are brief but necessary. Caravans exchange information about the safety of certain paths, availability of water, and recent sightings of raiders or hostile tribes. Idris, always mindful of the manuscript, listens carefully, absorbing details that might affect their journey. A wrong turn or delayed rest could expose the precious cargo to excessive heat or sand abrasion. The manuscript's survival hinges on these interactions, yet its importance is invisible to most observers. It is quietly protected, its value understood only by those who recognize the knowledge it carries and the fragility of its form. As the days progress, the desert proves relentless. Sandstorms arise suddenly, reducing visibility to a few meters, the wind carrying fine grains that slip into every fold of cloth and leather. The caravan slows, forming tight clusters to protect both animals and goods. Idris wraps the manuscript more securely, shielding it from abrasive sand. The camels huddle together, instinctively seeking shelter and stability. Nights are long and cold, with temperatures dropping sharply. The manuscript rests between bundles of padded goods, insulated against the chill. Yet the contrast between heat and cold tests the materials. Parchment expands and contracts with such shifts, and the ink can become brittle, threatening to flake. The journey is not dramatic in the sense of battles or sudden catastrophes, but the slow, cumulative stress of the environment is just as perilous for delicate manuscripts. During a pause near a small oasis, Idris takes the opportunity to inspect the manuscript. He unwraps it carefully, examining each page for signs of wear. Tiny specks of sand have settled into the edges, and he brushes them away with practiced fingers. The diagrams of medicinal plants, the annotations in the margins, and the flowing script of the main text all seem to vibrate with life under his attention. Each page is a small victory against the desert, a testament to both human diligence and the resilience of knowledge. Here, amid the palms and the gentle trickle of water, the manuscript exists in a liminal space between preservation and decay, between the safety of its origins and the uncertainty of distant lands. The caravan is not immune to human challenges either. Food and water supplies must be rationed, and tensions occasionally arise among traders and travelers. Conflicts are rarely violent, but disagreements over routes, resources, or caravan leadership are common. The manuscript, oblivious to these tensions, remains at the center of Idris's careful attention. Its survival depends not only on its material resilience, but also on his ability to navigate the complexities of human interaction. Small decisions, how to balance loads, when to pause, whom to trust, become critical. The desert, though vast and silent, is as much a test of social skill and judgment as it is of endurance. Occasionally, the caravan passes ruins or abandoned settlements, silent reminders of journeys long past. Idris imagines the manuscripts that may have once traveled these same paths, some surviving, others lost to the sands. Each lost text represents a gap in human knowledge, a thread severed in the chain of centuries. The manuscript he carries is now part of this long continuum, a fragile link in a chain that stretches far beyond the desert. Awareness of this responsibility infuses Idris's actions with a quiet reverence. Every adjustment, every precaution is a form of guardianship, a small act of devotion to the enduring power of ideas. As night falls, the caravan halts once more. The desert sky is a vault of stars, glittering with patterns familiar to ancient navigators. Firelight flickers against the camels, casting shadows on the dunes, while travelers gather quietly for brief meals and rest. Idris unwraps the manuscript once more, confirming that the pages remain intact. In these moments of inspection, the manuscript seems almost animate, its journey acknowledged in the careful hands that shield it from harm. Yet the dangers are far from over. Ahead lie longer stretches without water, uncertain weather, and the ever-present possibility of bandits. The manuscript's journey is only halfway complete, and every precaution taken so far is a step toward survival, not a guarantee. Amid these quiet preparations, Idris reflects on the broader implications of his task. This manuscript is more than a collection of words and diagrams. It is a repository of knowledge, ideas, and practical advice. Its journey, though slow and painstaking, ensures that distant communities may benefit from centuries of accumulated understanding. The survival of such texts shapes how medicine is practiced, how astronomy is understood, and how legal and religious decisions are informed in cities far from Timbuktu. The journey of one manuscript, small and unassuming, carries ripple effects across cultures and generations. Yet, even with careful attention and experience, uncertainty remains. The desert is indifferent to human intent, and the chain of custody is fragile. Idris cannot control the wind, the behavior of camels, or the whims of other travelers. He can only act with diligence, adjusting, observing, and protecting as best as he can. And in this uncertainty lies the quiet drama of the manuscript's journey. The delicate balance between human care and natural forces, between intention and circumstance, between preservation and loss. As the caravan settles for the night, Idris gazes at the manuscript, wrapped securely and resting atop the padded cargo. He knows that the path ahead is long, and that each day brings both risk and promise. The desert stretches endlessly, silent and imposing, yet within this vastness, the manuscript continues its slow passage, carrying the accumulated knowledge of generations into an uncertain future. What will become of the manuscript when it finally reaches the distant city? Will it find safety in a hidden library, appreciated and preserved by careful hands? Or will some unforeseen calamity erase its knowledge from history? The uncertainty remains, a quiet tension accompanying every step of its journey. A reminder that even the most deliberate efforts to safeguard human thought are always provisional. Weeks pass, and the caravan finally nears the outskirts of a distant city, a place of winding streets, clustered mud brick homes, and bustling markets. The desert stretches behind it, a vast, unforgiving expanse that the manuscript has survived. Thanks to the careful attention of Idris and the steady rhythm of the camels, the city ahead promises both relief and risk, a chance for the manuscript to be safely housed, but also exposure to new hands, new environments, and unforeseen hazards. Each step closer is both reassurance and tension, a delicate balance between hope and uncertainty within the city. The caravan navigates narrow lanes, crowded with merchants selling spices, textiles, and household goods. The manuscript, wrapped and tucked atop other cargo, remains largely invisible to the busy passers-by. Its value is hidden, known only to those who understand the significance of the knowledge contained within. Idris moves cautiously, alert to jostling crowds, uneven paths, and potential theft. The quiet vigilance of the desert now meets the chaotic unpredictability of urban life. Each moment demands careful attention, and the lessons learned in the Sahara prove invaluable in navigating this new, more densely populated environment. The manuscript's destination is a private library, tucked behind a high wall and guarded by both physical barriers and the respect of those who understand its worth. Here, scholars and collectors maintain collections of rare texts, preserving centuries of knowledge from the desert, from distant cities, and from long-forgotten scholars. Idris delivers the manuscript to the librarian, a man whose hands are experienced in the careful handling of fragile pages. Together, they unroll the manuscript, examining it for any damage incurred during the long journey. Relief washes over Idris as he sees the pages intact, the ink crisp and unblemished, the diagrams precise. The centuries-old work has survived the desert human error, and the long journey to reach this sanctuary of learning. The librarian carefully inspects the manuscript, cataloging its content and noting its provenance. It is placed on a low shelf, cushioned between other texts of similar importance. The library itself is designed with the preservation of knowledge in mind. Thick walls protect against heat. Humidity is monitored and controlled, and access is limited to those entrusted with the manuscripts. Here, the fragile work that once traveled precariously across the desert now finds stability, a safe haven where future generations may study, copy, and learn from its contents. The manuscript has completed the most dangerous leg of its journey. Yet its story does not end it, now enters a cycle of quiet influence, impacting the minds and ideas of those who engage with it. In the days and months that follow, the manuscript is occasionally consulted by scholars who visit the library. A doctor studying herbal remedies references the text in preparing medicines. A student of astronomy compares celestial observations. A philosopher reads marginal notes left by previous scribes to understand evolving interpretations. Each interaction is subtle, almost imperceptible, yet cumulatively. They extend the manuscript's influence far beyond its place of origin. The careful labor of scribes, the vigilance of travelers, and the dedication of librarians converge to allow knowledge to survive and thrive across generations. The journey that began in Timbuktu, across deserts and uncertain terrains, has now transformed into intellectual resonance in a new community. Yet, even in this relative safety, the manuscript remains vulnerable. Fires, floods, political upheaval, and neglect all threaten its continued existence. The city, while protective, cannot guarantee permanence. Herein lies a quiet paradox. The manuscript's survival is a product of both human diligence and fortune, a balance between careful preservation and the unpredictability of time. Every reader who opens it, every scholar who references it, participates in its ongoing journey, keeping its knowledge alive. Even as external threats loom in the background, as Idris reflects on the completed journey, he feels a sense of satisfaction mixed with humility. He knows that he has been a custodian of knowledge, a link in a chain that stretches across centuries. Yet he also understands that his role, though critical, is temporary. The manuscript's endurance depends on successive generations of careful hands and attentive minds. Its story is larger than any single individual, a reminder of the collective effort required to preserve human understanding. The manuscript's value lies not only in its content, but in its very survival, a testament to patience, resilience, and the quiet dedication of countless individuals. At night, in the library's cool, dimly lit rooms, the manuscript rests alongside dozens of others, each with its own journey, its own history, and its own fragile path through time. Scholars move quietly between shelves, sometimes pausing to admire the meticulous script, the diagrams, the careful notes in the margins. The desert outside, once the manuscript's greatest challenge, is now a distant memory, yet its influence lingers. The manuscript carries within it the endurance of those who created, copied, and safeguarded it. Its journey has been perilous, but through it, knowledge survives, patient, quiet, and enduring. And yet, even in this sanctuary, one cannot help but wonder How many manuscripts never reach their intended destination? How many centuries of wisdom are lost to storms, neglect, or chance? The journey of this particular manuscript is a rare story of survival, but countless others vanish quietly, leaving gaps in the tapestry of human knowledge. Each manuscript that survives is therefore precious, not merely for its content, but for the sheer improbability of its endurance. Its existence is a small miracle, a fragile bridge connecting past wisdom to future understanding. As the candlelight flickers across the shelves, casting gentle shadows on the parchment, you sense the profound quiet of the library. Here, knowledge rests, yet remains alive, waiting for the next hand to turn a page, the next eye to study its words, the next mind to build upon its insights. The manuscript has completed its physical journey, but its intellectual journey continues indefinitely, carried forward by the curiosity, diligence, and reflection of those who encounter it. It is a testament to human persistence, the fragile endurance of knowledge, and the subtle, often unnoticed forces that shape the course of history. You step into a modest courtyard in Timbuktu, where sunlight spills across the walls of clay and mud, warming the earth beneath your feet. The hum of daily life in the city is faint here, replaced by a quieter rhythm, the soft scraping of a reed pen, the rustle of parchment, and the muted conversations of women who have spent their lives in the service of knowledge. Timbuktu is often celebrated for its grand libraries and scholarly men. Yet it is easy to overlook the countless women who, in subtle and vital ways, ensured that knowledge persisted through the ages. In a small room adjoining a family home, women sit cross-legged on mats, their hands busy with delicate tasks. Some copy texts in neat, flowing script, preserving everything from religious teachings to medicinal recipes. Others are engaged in cataloging and binding, carefully assembling collections of parchment into bundles for safe storage. There is a deliberate quiet in their work, an unspoken understanding that the labor of writing, sorting, and preserving is both sacred and essential. Each movement is careful, measured, and imbued with a respect for the fragile manuscripts that pass through their hands. One woman, Amina, is particularly skilled in binding manuscripts. Her fingers, nimble and practiced, fold parchment, sew pages together, and cover them in soft leather. She works slowly, ensuring that each book is durable enough to survive handling, travel, and time itself. There is pride in her meticulous work, though she rarely speaks of it. Recognition is scarce for women in these scholarly endeavors, yet their contribution is no less significant. The manuscripts she binds may never bear her name, but they carry her diligence, patience, and devotion across centuries. The work of these women is not limited to technical skills alone. Many are custodians of oral knowledge, remembering details that may not be recorded on parchment. They recall genealogies, local histories, recipes for healing, and the traditions of ritual and prayer. When male scribes consult texts for copying, these women often provide the practical guidance needed to interpret obscure references, correct errors, or preserve context. Their role is both invisible and indispensable. They are the living memory that complements the written word. In addition to technical and oral expertise, these women often serve as teachers. Younger girls learn the skills of writing, binding, and preservation under the guidance of older women, often within the confines of their homes. Lessons are slow, patient, and repetitive, ensuring mastery over time. The focus is not on speed or productivity, but on accuracy, care, and respect for the knowledge being transmitted. This quiet education, largely unrecorded in the official histories of Timbuktu, is a critical component of the city's intellectual life. Without these women, the continuity of manuscripts would be far more precarious. Daily life in the household intertwines with scholarly labor. Meals are prepared in modest kitchens. Water is drawn from nearby wells, and children are cared for while work continues. The environment is simultaneously domestic and scholarly, a space where practical life and intellectual effort coexist seamlessly. Parchments may rest on a low table beside bowls of millet or lentils, and the clatter of pots may accompany the scratching of pen on paper. There is no separation between the ordinary and the scholarly. Instead, the two merge, creating a rhythm of daily life that supports both survival and the preservation of knowledge. The manuscripts themselves cover a wide range of subjects. Women often handle texts on medicine, practical law, poetry, and domestic science areas, sometimes neglected by male scholars focused on theology or mathematics. They copy herbal remedies, record childbirth practices, and transcribe household management techniques. These texts, though seemingly mundane, contain crucial information for sustaining life in a challenging environment. Their work ensures that practical knowledge is preserved alongside philosophical and religious texts, providing a fuller picture of human experience and survival beyond the household. Women sometimes act as intermediaries with traders, scholars, and travelers. They facilitate the movement of manuscripts, ensuring the texts reach the correct hands or are stored safely until needed. Their understanding of both the material fragility of the manuscripts and the peekaboo social dynamics of Timbuktu allows them to navigate these tasks effectively. The work is quiet, often unseen, but it directly impacts the survival of knowledge and the continuity of scholarly traditions, despite their essential role. These women operate in a world where recognition is limited. Few manuscripts bear their signatures, and official records seldom mention their contributions. Yet their impact is enduring. Each page copied, each book bound, each oral lesson imparted becomes a thread in the larger tapestry of Timbuktu's intellectual history. The continuity of manuscripts, their survival through generations, travel across deserts, and eventual arrival in distant libraries depends in no small part on their labor. As the afternoon wears on, you observe Amina carefully finishing a bound manuscript, tying the final leather strip with precision. She pauses to inspect her work, turning the pages and checking the alignment. Each completed manuscript is a quiet triumph, a small act of preservation against the inevitable forces of decay, neglect, and time. Yet, even as she works, the question lingers: how much of this knowledge will survive, and how much will vanish quietly, leaving only the faint traces of women's labor behind? The manuscripts are fragile, and the desert, social upheaval, and the passage of centuries all threaten their survival. The efforts of these women are a testament to endurance and dedication, but the outcome is never guaranteed in this quiet courtyard. You realize that the preservation of knowledge is not solely the product of grand libraries or famous scholars. It is the result of countless small, patient actions performed by women whose names rarely appear in the annals of history. Their lives are measured not in public recognition, but in the survival of manuscripts, the accuracy of copied texts, and the careful transmission of wisdom across generations. And yet, for all their diligence, uncertainty remains. Will the next generation continue their work? Or will these silent keepers of knowledge be forgotten, leaving gaps in the intellectual heritage of Timbuktu? The sun begins to sink, casting long shadows across the courtyard. The women continue their work, unaware of the gaze of history, yet wholly engaged in the act of preservation. Each line written, each page bound, and each lesson imparted is a quiet assertion of continuity, a defiance of oblivion. And as you leave this space, a thought lingers in your mind. The survival of knowledge is rarely spectacular. It is built on patience, endurance, and the often unseen labor of those who care enough to ensure that words, once written, are not lost to time. As evening approaches, the courtyard quiets, and the gentle glow of lanterns illuminates the intricate work being done by women who have dedicated themselves to the preservation of knowledge. You notice the rhythm of their labor, the careful folding of parchment, the precise alignment of inked lines, the delicate stitching of manuscripts that have survived generations of handling. There is a meditative quality to their work, a slow cadence that mirrors the ebb and flow of life in Timbuktu. Each movement is purposeful, yet almost invisible to the outside observer, as though the act of preservation itself requires a certain unobtrusiveness among the women. Mariam has become particularly skilled in transcription. She is methodical, her reed pen tracing each character with deliberate care. Her work focuses on medical texts and herbal remedies, documents that have direct practical implications for daily life in the city and surrounding regions. Through her copying, knowledge that might otherwise be lost is made accessible to future generations. Mariam's fingers are stained faintly with ink, a visible testament to hours of patient labor, but the impact of her work is subtle, almost imperceptible outside the walls of the home and the immediate community she serves. The women's influence extends beyond copying. They are integral to cataloging, sorting, and maintaining the manuscripts once they have been produced. Shelves are carefully arranged according to subject, author, and provenance. Marginal notes are preserved, cross-references are checked, and fragile pages are reinforced or stored with padding to prevent damage. Their attention to detail ensures that the intellectual heritage of Timbuktu is not only preserved, but also organized in a way that makes it usable. Without this careful management, even the most meticulously copied manuscripts could be rendered inaccessible, lost in disarray despite surviving the ravages of time. Beyond their technical work, women also serve as educators. Younger girls learn to read and write, to handle manuscripts properly, and to understand the importance of maintaining historical records. Lessons are often informal, passed down in the domestic setting rather than formal schools. Yet these teachings are critical. The girls are trained not merely in the mechanics of writing, but in the patience, attention, and respect required to safeguard knowledge. Over time, they internalize these values, ensuring that the labor of preservation continues beyond the current generation. The continuity of scholarly culture in Timbuktu owes as much to these women as it does to the famed male scholars, often celebrated in historical accounts. Daily life is intricately woven with intellectual labor. While the women prepare meals, fetch water, or tend to children, the manuscripts lie nearby, constantly at hand. Tasks are shared seamlessly. No single action is separate from the larger rhythm of preservation. For example, while preparing ink or cleaning a room, a woman may simultaneously observe the condition of a manuscript or remember the location of a particular text. The boundaries between domestic responsibility and scholarly engagement are porous, creating an environment where intellectual labor is part of the fabric of daily life. This integration ensures that knowledge is not treated as an isolated pursuit, but as a living, ongoing practice embedded in the rhythms of the community. Challenges, of course, are constant. Manuscripts are vulnerable to environmental hazards. Humidity, sand, and the shifting temperatures of the desert threaten the integrity of pages and bindings. Social challenges also persist. In a society where formal recognition of women's scholarly labor is limited, their work is often undervalued, invisible in official accounts. Yet despite these obstacles, the women persist. Their dedication is driven not by external acknowledgement, their communities, and the intangible legacy of knowledge itself. Each completed page and carefully bound manuscript is a quiet triumph over both natural and social adversity. The manuscripts handled by women often contain practical knowledge, bridging the gap between theoretical scholarship and the lived experience of the community. They include medical treatments, agricultural techniques, legal guidance, and accounts of local customs. These texts are not only informative, they are a lifeline enabling families and communities to navigate challenges, solve problems, and make informed decisions. Women, who are frequently responsible for domestic and healthcare management, play a critical role in ensuring that this knowledge is accurate, accessible, and preserved. In this way, their labor has tangible, immediate consequences, even as it contributes to long-term intellectual survival. As the night deepens, you notice that the women's work continues with minimal interruption. Oil lamps cast flickering shadows across the walls, illuminating rows of manuscripts stacked neatly on low shelves. The quiet is punctuated by the soft scratching of reed pens and the occasional whispered instruction. There is a sense of both calm and urgency. Calm in the steady rhythm of labor, urgency in the awareness that every page preserved, every detail recorded, is a step against the encroachment of loss. The manuscripts themselves seem to pulse with history, absorbing the attention and care of each hand that touches them. Yet, even in this careful, deliberate work, uncertainty persists. Each manuscript preserved is a fragile victory against time and circumstance. Will these texts survive political upheaval, the shifting sands of history, or the neglect of future generations? How many will endure, and how many will vanish quietly, taking centuries of knowledge with them? These questions linger, unspoken yet present, a shadow over the otherwise serene labor of preservation. The women themselves may never know the full impact of their work, yet their contribution is crucial, forming the backbone of Timbuktu's enduring intellectual legacy. In observing this world, you begin to understand the paradox. The most profound influences are often the quietest. While grand libraries, famous scholars, and political leaders occupy the pages of history. It is the steady, patient labor of women, unrecorded, undervalued, and largely invisible, that ensures the survival of knowledge across generations. They are the silent keepers of manuscripts, the custodians of continuity, and the unseen architects of cultural memory. Without them, the city's intellectual heritage might never have persisted, and countless manuscripts, ideas, and discoveries could have been lost to time. As you leave the courtyard for the evening, the women continue their work, undistracted by the setting sun or the deepening shadows. Each line written, each page bound, each lesson imparted, carries forward an unseen but enduring legacy. And yet, the question remains, how much of this labor will survive? And how many stories of women's contributions will remain unrecorded, hidden in the margins of history? The uncertainty is part of the quiet weight of their work, a reminder that preservation is never guaranteed, but effort, patience, and dedication remain the most reliable allies in the struggle against oblivion. Night has fully settled over Timbuktu. The city's streets, usually filled with the faint hum of traders and travelers, are now quiet, save for the occasional bark of a distant dog or the soft rustle of palm leaves in the evening breeze. Inside the modest courtyards and homes where women have labored for generations, the gentle glow of oil lamps illuminates manuscripts stacked carefully on low shelves. Here, the invisible work of preservation continues, undisturbed and quietly powerful. It is in these small, private spaces that the intellectual heart of Timbuktu beats with enduring rhythm. Miriam and several other women sit together, inspecting the manuscripts they have copied, bound, or cataloged over the past weeks. Each page is checked for damage, the alignment of text verified, and annotations noted. Even the smallest imperfection, a smudge, a tear, or an uneven fold, receives attention. In their eyes, every manuscript is a living entity, fragile yet capable of carrying knowledge across generations. Their work is deliberate, patient, and meticulous, a labor of love and responsibility. Though they seldom receive public recognition, the manuscripts themselves are a testament to their careful stewardship, their silent defiance against the erosive forces of time. The manuscripts cover a vast array of subjects, revealing the breadth of the women's involvement in the intellectual life of the city. Some focus on practical matters: medicine, childbirth, household management, and herbal remedies. Others preserve poetry, religious commentary, and philosophical reflections. Each manuscript reflects a dual purpose: the preservation of knowledge and its practical application to the challenges of daily life. The women's labor ensures that these texts remain accessible, intelligible, and intact for scholars, travelers, and future generations. Their work is invisible to most, yet it is foundational to the survival of Timbuktu's intellectual heritage. Beyond copying and binding, these women play a subtle but essential role in teaching. Younger girls learn not only the mechanics of writing and manuscript care, but also the patience, attention, and reverence required to maintain continuity. This instruction, often delivered quietly within the domestic sphere, shapes the next generation of custodians. Knowledge is transmitted not only through text, but through practice, observation, and repeated ritual. The women ensure that the skills necessary to preserve, interpret, and protect manuscripts do not vanish with a single generation. In this way, the intellectual legacy of Timbuktu is carried forward, largely hidden, yet profoundly enduring. The women also navigate challenges unique to their social and environmental context. The fragility of parchment, the sensitivity of ink to humidity and heat, and the constant threat of social and political upheaval all pose risks to the manuscripts in their care. Yet these women have developed strategies to mitigate these risks, storing texts in shaded, ventilated areas, reinforcing bindings, maintaining detailed records, and closely monitoring environmental conditions. Their intimate knowledge of both the materials and the surrounding society enables them to act as guardians of knowledge in ways that are as subtle as they are critical at times. These women serve as intermediaries between private libraries, scholars, and traveling merchants. They facilitate the safe movement of manuscripts, ensuring that texts reach the appropriate hands while minimizing exposure to hazards. Their understanding of the city's intellectual network allows them to perform these tasks with discretion and precision. Although often unacknowledged in formal accounts, their work directly shapes which manuscripts survive, which knowledge is transmitted, and which ideas influence future generations. In this sense, their impact is profound, if largely invisible. As the night deepens, the women pause briefly to reflect on their labor. There is no fanfare, no public tonally. The quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing that their efforts will enable the survival of centuries of knowledge. Each manuscript preserved is a small victory against time, a testament to endurance, patience, and care. Yet they are aware that uncertainty always lingers. Natural disasters, political instability, or human neglect could still threaten the manuscripts they protect. Their work is both heroic and precarious, a delicate balance between hope and vulnerability. The manuscripts themselves, resting securely on shelves, are silent witnesses to this quiet struggle. Each page, carefully inscribed and meticulously preserved, carries with it the hands of countless women whose labor ensured its survival. These texts may one day travel to distant libraries, inspire new generations of scholars, or influence decisions in fields as varied as medicine, law, and philosophy. Their survival is a bridge connecting past and future, an enduring legacy of human diligence and perseverance. And yet, as the women continue their work in the candlelit rooms, a question remains: how much of their contribution will be remembered, and how many of their names will be lost to history? Hidden in the margins of manuscripts they preserved so carefully, the uncertainty is a constant companion, reminding us that the preservation of knowledge is never guaranteed, and that every surviving text is the result of countless acts of dedication, often unseen and unrecorded. The city sleeps outside, silent and expansive, while within these small courtyards, women continue their labor quietly into the night. Their work may never appear in chronicles or official records, but its impact endures in every manuscript that survives, in every idea transmitted, and in every scholar who benefits from their diligence. The intellectual life of Timbuktu is inseparable from the patient, unseen work of these silent keepers of knowledge. Their labor is a testament to the power of quiet endurance, a reminder that the survival of ideas often depends not on grandeur or recognition, but on patience, care, and the persistence of human hands and minds. In this quiet, candlelit space, you are left with a lingering thought. Knowledge does not endure on its own. It survives because of those who commit themselves to its preservation, often unnoticed, often unacknowledged, yet indispensable. In Timbuktu, women were among these custodians, shaping the course of intellectual history through their meticulous, patient labor. And as you leave the courtyard, the flickering light illuminates not only manuscripts, but the invisible legacy of those whose work ensured that the words of the past could reach the future. You enter the shaded courtyard of one of Timbuktu's lesser-known libraries, where sunlight barely penetrates through the tightly packed walls. The air is thick with the faint scent of aged parchment, ink, and dust, a combination that speaks of centuries of human labor quietly devoted to the preservation of knowledge. These libraries are not grand halls filled with scholars debating loudly. Instead, they are spaces of patience, vigilance, and meticulous care, maintained by men and women whose work is largely unseen. They are the guardians of words, tasked with protecting fragile manuscripts from the slow, relentless forces of time, sand, and human error. The primary guardian, Al-Hassan, is a man whose life has been defined by these walls and the delicate objects within them. His hands are steady, trained over decades to handle parchment with the precision of a surgeon. Each manuscript he lifts, unfolds, and inspects carries centuries of thought, labor, and experience. The work is painstaking, often repetitive, and physically demanding. Hours are spent brushing away dust, aligning pages, reinforcing bindings, and carefully storing texts in wooden shelves or wrapped in cloth. The environment is controlled as best as possible. Shutters are closed to limit sunlight, and manuscripts are rotated regularly to prevent uneven exposure to humidity and heat. Yet the desert remains a constant, unpredictable threat. Shifting sands, sudden storms, and extreme temperature fluctuations conspire to degrade even the most carefully maintained texts. Al-Hassan's daily routine begins before sunrise. He walks through the quiet library halls, inspecting the manuscripts for signs of wear, damage, or insect activity. He notes subtle changes in the texture of parchment, the faint flaking of ink, or small cracks along leather bindings. Each observation prompts an intervention. Pages are pressed and flattened, cracks repaired, and loose threads resewn. These actions may seem minor, almost insignificant, but over decades, they determine whether knowledge survives or disappears. The work is invisible to outsiders, yet without it, centuries of accumulated wisdom would be irretrievably lost. Other guardians assist Al-Hassan in various capacities. Some focus on cataloging, meticulously recording the contents of each manuscript, its provenance, and any marginal notes. Others prepare manuscripts for safe transport or copying, ensuring that the fragile documents remain intact even as knowledge travels. The division of labor is precise. Every action is deliberate, aimed at minimizing risk while maximizing preservation. In this world, nothing is rushed, and even the smallest oversight can have catastrophic consequences. Guardians operate with a quiet sense of duty, their work sustained by dedication rather than recognition. The manuscripts themselves are delicate and diverse. Some contain religious texts, others document local history, medicine, astronomy, and poetry. Each presents unique challenges. Ink may fade, bindings weaken, and pages become brittle with age. The guardians must constantly anticipate and address these problems, using traditional techniques and sometimes improvising with limited materials. Leather is oiled, parchment flattened, and strings of binding reinforced. Even the act of turning pages requires care. Too swift a movement can tear the surface, undoing months or years of meticulous preservation. Time and sand are relentless adversaries, and the guardian's work is a quiet, ongoing battle against their inexorable effects. Visitors to the library are rare, and often their intentions are practical rather than scholarly. Merchants, travelers, or local officials may request texts, unaware of the fragile labor required to provide them. Each interaction demands caution. A manuscript cannot be handed over lightly, nor can it be subjected to careless handling. Guardians must judge the character and purpose of those who request access, weighing the risks against the benefits of sharing knowledge. Decisions are made quietly, guided by experience, intuition, and an unwavering commitment to preservation. Al-Hasan reflects on the impermanence inherent in his task. Despite all precautions, manuscripts are vulnerable to forces beyond human control. Floods, fires, theft, or the simple decay of time. The desert looms outside, a constant reminder of the fragility of human endeavor. And yet, he persists. The work is repetitive, slow, and often lonely, but each preserved page represents a triumph, a small victory over entropy. Every manuscript that survives is a connection across generations, a bridge between past and future knowledge. In this quiet struggle, guardians like Al-Hasan understand that their labor may go unnoticed, but its impact resonates far beyond the walls of the library. The guardians also contend with internal threats. Human error, neglect, or inattentiveness can be as destructive as sandstorms. A momentary lapse in attention, a mishandled manuscript, or an improperly sealed storage box can lead to irreparable damage. Training and experience are essential, yet even the most skilled hands cannot guarantee perfection. The guardian's work requires constant vigilance, patience, and the willingness to repeat tasks endlessly. It is a labor without fanfare, where success is measured in survival rather than accolades. As the afternoon sun wanes and the library cools, Al-Hasan pauses to inspect a particularly fragile manuscript. Its parchment is yellowed and curling at the edges, its ink faded but still legible. He gently lifts the pages, turning them with deliberate care. Imagining the scribe who first wrote these words centuries ago. Each line is a whisper from the past, a message carried across time, and Al-Hasan is its quiet custodian. He understands that every action, every adjustment, is part of a larger continuum, a centuries-long chain of human effort dedicated to preserving knowledge against the ceaseless erosion of time and the unforgiving desert. And yet, even as he works, uncertainty lingers. How many manuscripts will endure the centuries? How many will succumb to the elements or human oversight? The work of guardians is painstaking, patient, and often thankless, but it is indispensable. Each preserved text is a testament to human perseverance, a record of ideas, traditions, and discoveries that might otherwise vanish. The guardian's quiet diligence ensures that knowledge survives, even when recognition and reward are absent. The library remains silent as the sun sets, its manuscripts resting safely on their shelves. Guardians continue their work, attentive, careful, and unwavering. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, a reminder of both the fragility and resilience of human knowledge. The manuscripts endure not because of grandeur or fame, but because of quiet, persistent care, a testament to patience, dedication, and the subtle power of human diligence. What will become of these manuscripts in the centuries to come? Will they survive the ravages of time and the desert, or will some be lost quietly, taking with them fragments of human thought that may never be recovered? The guardians know the outcome is uncertain, yet they continue their work, a quiet resistance against the forces of decay, preserving the words of the past for generations yet to come. Dawn breaks over Timbuktu, and the first light filters through narrow windows, casting a soft glow across the library's cool, quiet rooms. The air is faintly scented with parchment and the lingering residue of ink, a reminder of centuries of labor quietly devoted to the preservation of knowledge. Inside, the guardians begin their day with methodical precision. There is no rush, no urgency beyond the steady rhythm of meticulous care. Each day is a rehearsal of patience, a careful choreography designed to protect fragile manuscripts against the slow yet relentless forces of time and sand. The guardians' routines are precise and deliberate. First comes inspection. Every shelf, bundle, and manuscript is examined for signs of damage. Dust is brushed away gently, pages are straightened, and bindings checked for weaknesses. Guardians like Al-Hassan have developed an almost instinctive understanding of the manuscripts, able to detect subtle shifts in texture, faint discolorations, or the earliest signs of ink deterioration. Each observation triggers a small intervention, a delicate reinforcement here, a gentle pressing there. The labor is quiet but exacting, a constant dialogue between the human hand and the fragile material it seeks to preserve. Beyond physical maintenance, guardians focus on cataloging and record-keeping. Manuscripts are organized according to subject, origin, and author, while marginalia and annotations are meticulously noted. Some texts are duplicated for preservation, copied by skilled scribes, to ensure that if one volume is damaged, another survives. In this way, the library functions both as a repository and as a network, distributing knowledge carefully across multiple texts. Even seemingly minor decisions where to store a manuscript, how often to handle it, which texts to copy first have long-term consequences for the survival of knowledge. Environmental management is a constant concern. The desert climate is unforgiving. Heat, dryness, and occasional sand infiltration threaten every page. Guardians employ strategies honed over generations. Manuscripts are stored in shaded rooms, insulated from direct sunlight. Humidity is controlled through careful ventilation and occasional placement of moisture-absorbing materials. Sand is kept at bay by tightly sealed doors, elevated shelves, and routine cleaning. These precautions are subtle but critical, illustrating the ingenuity required to preserve delicate texts in a hostile environment. The guardian's expertise in these matters often exceeds that of outsiders. Their skills are the product of observation, trial and error, and decades of accumulated knowledge. Interactions with visitors require equal care. Scholars, merchants, and travelers occasionally request access to manuscripts. But the guardians must weigh the benefits of sharing knowledge against the risks of damage. Every handling of a text carries potential consequences. Pages may tear, ink may smudge, or bindings may weaken. The guardians have learned to judge character, intentions, and experience before allowing manuscripts to leave their controlled environment. Knowledge is both fragile and valuable, and its custodians must act as both gatekeepers and guides, balancing accessibility with preservation. Guardians also contend with internal risks, subtle threats that can be as dangerous as environmental hazards. Human-era inattentive touch, a misfiled manuscript, or improper handling can irreparably damage centuries of accumulated wisdom. Training is therefore continuous, passed from experienced guardians to apprentices in a slow, deliberate process. Young guardians learn to recognize the faintest discolorations in parchment, to understand the elasticity of various inks, and to anticipate the gradual effects of temperature and humidity. This tacit knowledge is critical, passed quietly and carefully, ensuring continuity in the library's protective practices. Beyond routine labor, guardians are also historians in their own right. By reading and understanding the manuscripts, they contextualize the information, noting relationships between texts, correcting small errors, and sometimes updating catalog entries with new observations. Their work is a form of active engagement with history, not just preservation of objects, but the maintenance of meaning. They ensure that the manuscripts are not only physically intact, but also intellectually accessible, a bridge between past scholarship and future inquiry. Despite the care taken, uncertainty is ever present. Fires, floods, political upheaval, and theft remain constant threats. Guardians know that even the most diligent precautions cannot guarantee survival. This awareness shapes their labor, instilling both patience and humility. Each day of careful work is a temporary victory, an assertion against the inevitability of decay. Yet, it is this very uncertainty that makes their labor meaningful. Each preserved manuscript is a testament to human perseverance, a small triumph against entropy, and a quiet contribution to the continuity of knowledge as the sun reaches its zenith. Al-Hassan pauses to inspect a particularly fragile manuscript, a collection of legal rulings and commentaries, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. He carefully lifts it, turns each page with slow precision, and considers the chain of hands that have preserved it over the decades. The manuscript's survival is not a product of chance alone. It is the culmination of countless small acts of attention, skill, and patience. Its continued existence depends on ongoing vigilance. Yet, it also carries the silent legacy of those who handled it before him, a reminder that preservation is a collective, intergenerational effort. Outside the library, the desert remains vast, its shifting sands and extreme temperatures an ever-present reminder of the fragility of human endeavor. Within the walls, however, guardians like Al-Hassan resist the erosion of time. One page, one binding, and one careful observation at a time. They are the invisible bulwark against loss, ensuring that ideas, history, and culture endure. Their labor is quiet, meticulous, and largely unseen, yet without it, the intellectual life of Timbuktu and the knowledge contained within its libraries would be imperiled as evening approaches. The guardians review the day's work, noting manuscripts that require special attention and planning for tasks to come. The cycle is unending, a rhythm dictated by the delicate needs of the texts and the relentless passage of time. Each day is both routine and precarious, a balance between diligence and uncertainty. The manuscripts, resting on shelves and tables, seem almost alive in their presence, a subtle acknowledgement of the care they receive. And yet, as the library quiets and the desert winds whisper against the walls, a question remains: how many manuscripts will endure the coming centuries? How many will survive the hazards of both nature and human neglect? And how many ideas will be lost to oblivion? The guardians continue their work in the knowledge that certainty is impossible, yet they persist. Their quiet vigilance ensures that knowledge has the chance to endure, shaping future generations, even if their own names are never recorded. Night falls over Timbuktu, and the city settles into a muted hush. The wind rustles the edges of clay walls and carries faint grains of sand, reminders of the desert that surrounds this oasis of human knowledge. Inside the library, lanterns cast a soft glow over shelves stacked with manuscripts, illuminating their fragile forms and the quiet work of the guardians who dedicate their lives to protecting them. Here, there is no audience, no applause. The labor is invisible to most, yet its importance is immeasurable. The survival of centuries of thought, culture, and practical knowledge depends on their steady hands, patience, and vigilance. Al-Hassan moves carefully through the narrow aisles, inspecting each manuscript with practiced attention. His fingers graze the parchment, noting its texture, checking for small tears or cracks in the ink. Every volume tells a story not only of its content, but of the hands that produced and preserved it over generations. Each manuscript is a bridge across time, connecting the minds of scribes, scholars, and guardians from the past to the readers of the future. The guardians' labor, though quiet and often unrecognized, ensures that these connections remain intact, their pages brittle and ink fading, yet the guardians' interventions allow them to endure. They employ subtle techniques. Pages are flattened, bindings reinforced, protective coverings applied, and storage rotated to minimize environmental stress. These interventions are small, almost imperceptible, but cumulatively, they determine whether a text survives or disintegrates. In this delicate balance, the guardians serve as both caretakers and mediators between the fragile material of the manuscripts and the relentless forces of time, climate, and human activity. The guardians also act as stewards of knowledge in a broader sense. Beyond physical preservation, they organize, catalog, and sometimes duplicate manuscripts, ensuring that information is accessible without jeopardizing fragile originals. They serve as mentors to apprentices, transmitting skills and knowledge that are crucial for continuity. Their work is a blend of practical skill, intellectual engagement, and foresight. Every decision, whether to repair, duplicate, or limit access, is shaped by a deep understanding of the manuscript's value and vulnerability. In this way, guardians preserve not only the text, but the potential for ideas to influence generations yet to come. Despite the care devoted to the manuscripts, the guardians remain aware of the precariousness of their task. Fires, floods, theft, and decay threaten the texts at every moment. Even the smallest lapse, careless hand, a neglected shelf, or unanticipated humidity can destroy what centuries of labor have preserved. This awareness imbues their work with both gravity and humility. Success is measured not by recognition or accolades, but by survival. Each manuscript that endures is a victory. Each lost text, a silent reminder of the fragility of human knowledge. The guardians' labor is also deeply intertwined with the rhythm of daily life in Timbuktu. Meals are prepared nearby. Children's voices occasionally echo from adjacent rooms, and the city beyond the walls continues its relentless hum. Yet, inside the library, there is a deliberate quiet, a sense of order and continuity that contrasts with the desert's unpredictability. Here, time is measured by careful attention to manuscripts, the rhythm of hands across parchment, and the slow, deliberate pace of preservation. This quiet discipline is the backbone of the city's intellectual endurance, a testament to human patience and foresight in observing Al-Hassan and his fellow guardians. You begin to understand the paradox of preservation. The most significant contributions to history are often invisible, while scholars, rulers, and travelers appear prominently in historical records. It is the labor of those who maintain the continuity of knowledge hands, catalog, and protect that enables ideas to survive. The guardians of Timbuktu's libraries embody this principle. Their work is unglamorous, repetitive, and largely unseen, yet it is indispensable. Without them, entire chapters of human understanding could vanish into the desert sands, leaving only the faintest traces behind. Even as the night deepens and the library grows still, the guardians continue their vigilance. Each manuscript is a fragile universe of ideas, and each action taken by the guardians preserves the potential for those ideas to influence the future. Knowledge, they understand, does not endure on its own. It requires care, attention, and persistence across generations. Their labor, humble yet profound, is a testament to the quiet resilience of human effort, a shield against the erosion of both time and sand. And yet, a lingering question remains. How many manuscripts will continue to survive the centuries? And how many will succumb quietly to neglect, disaster, or human oversight? Each manuscript preserved is a victory against impermanence, yet the work is never truly finished. Guardians know that their success is temporary, contingent, and ongoing. Their legacy, like the manuscripts themselves, is fragile but enduring, a subtle force shaping history in ways that may never be fully recognized. As the candlelight flickers over the shelves and the desert wind sighs outside, you are left with a quiet, reflective thought. The survival of knowledge often depends not on grand achievements, but on the patient, meticulous, and largely invisible labor of guardians. Timbuktu's libraries, their manuscripts, and the people who protect them offer a profound reminder that history endures, not only through ideas, but through care, persistence, and the silent dedication of those who protect what might otherwise be lost. The streets of Timbuktu, once alive with the rhythmic cadence of scholars' footsteps, merchants' calls, and the soft rustle of pages in libraries, now feel quieter. The city that had long been celebrated as a beacon of learning, a hub for manuscripts, trade, and intellectual exchange, is beginning to show signs of change. The Golden Age, when scholars, scribes, and guardians labored diligently in sunlit courtyards and whispering libraries, is fading. Its legacy, however, persists fragile, yet enduring through the manuscripts that survived centuries of human effort, environmental challenges, and historical upheaval. You wander through the remains of the old library districts, where clay walls stand cracked in places. Inside, manuscripts rest in bundles tied with string, leaning precariously on shelves or stacked on the floor. The meticulous order once maintained by generations of guardians is under strain. Time has taken its toll on the buildings, on the manuscripts, and on the human networks that supported their preservation. Yet even in this apparent fragility, there is resilience. The texts themselves carry centuries of labor, knowledge, and devotion, silently asserting their continued relevance in a world that is shifting around them. During the Golden Age, Timbuktu thrived as an intellectual center. Scholars from across West Africa, the Middle East, and North Africa traveled to the city, contributing knowledge in fields ranging from astronomy to medicine, theology to poetry. Manuscripts flourished, copied carefully by scribes, catalogued by guardians, and preserved through the vigilance of households and libraries. These texts were not mere symbols of wealth or status. They were living repositories of culture, information, and practical wisdom. They guided legal decisions, medical treatments, philosophical debates, and the management of everyday life. For decades, even centuries, the city's intellectual ecosystem operated with a quiet harmony, sustained by the coordinated efforts of scribes, scholars, guardians, and families. But change is relentless. Political shifts, economic fluctuations, and the pressures of external invasions begin to unsettle the careful networks that supported the manuscripts. The city faces raids and occupations, and manuscripts, once carefully guarded, become vulnerable to looting, displacement, or neglect. Families that once housed libraries find themselves struggling to protect their collections. Guardians, stretched thin or displaced, must make difficult choices about which manuscripts to save and which to risk losing. In this context, the survival of knowledge becomes a precarious daily struggle. Each decision carries weight. For the loss of a single text may erase centuries of insight and human experience. Amid these challenges, individuals emerge as quiet heroes. Families continue to protect manuscripts in private homes, sometimes hiding them in ceilings, behind walls, or buried in the sand. Guardians adapt, reinforcing what remains and improvising solutions when materials or space are limited. Scholars who remain in the city focus on copying, translating, or transporting manuscripts to safer locations. Each action, however small, is a thread in a fragile web of preservation, ensuring that knowledge does not vanish entirely even as the city's golden age recedes into memory. The manuscripts themselves are fragile witnesses to this period of transition. Some show signs of heavy use, pages darkened from repeated handling, ink smudged, bindings fraying. Others remain pristine, preserved in hidden corners, or carefully maintained by families who understand their value. Across these pages, one can trace the continuity of human effort, the labor of scribes, the vigilance of guardians, and the dedication of families who understood that preserving knowledge was a moral and cultural imperative. Even in their vulnerability, these manuscripts embody resilience, a quiet testament to the human drive to retain memory and understanding against the encroachment of time. This period of decline also highlights the uneven survival of knowledge. Some subjects, especially those considered practical or essential for survival medicine, agriculture, will receive particular attention, ensuring their preservation. Other texts, perhaps more esoteric or poetic, may be neglected or lost. The choices of what to protect, what to copy, and what to risk are shaped by human priorities and limitations, reflecting the fragility not only of material manuscripts, but of the broader intellectual ecosystem. In these decisions, one can see both the limitations and the remarkable resilience of human effort. Knowledge survives not by chance alone, but through the attentive, patient labor of countless hands, often unseen and unrecorded. Despite the fading of the Golden Age, the manuscripts continue to carry life into the future. Families still read, copy, and discuss the texts. Wandering scholars consult them. Traders carry fragments of knowledge to distant towns and cities. Even as the political and economic structures that once supported the city's intellectual vibrancy decline, the manuscripts themselves act as bridges across time and space, connecting past wisdom to future generations. Their survival is never guaranteed, yet it is a quiet triumph that they endure at all. And yet, uncertainty persists. How many manuscripts will survive the next decades, centuries, or millennia? How much knowledge has already been lost to neglect, theft, or the shifting sands of the desert? Each surviving manuscript is a fragile victory, a reminder of both the impermanence and the resilience of human culture. The fading of the Golden Age is a slow, quiet process, but it does not erase the impact of those who labored to preserve knowledge. Every text that endures is a testament to centuries of patience, care, and vigilance, an invisible chain linking the past to the present and the future. As the sun sets over the city, casting long shadows across courtyards and libraries, you sense the delicate tension between loss and survival. The manuscripts, resting quietly in their shelves and bundles, are silent witnesses to both human fragility and human perseverance. They carry the weight of history, memory, and culture, surviving through the attentive care of countless individuals whose efforts may never be fully recognized. The story of Timbuktu's Golden Age may be fading, but in these manuscripts, its spirit endures, fragile, persistent, and quietly defiant. The morning light filters softly through narrow windows in one of Timbuktu's remaining library rooms, illuminating manuscripts stacked carefully on shelves and tables. Dust motes drift lazily in the warm air, settling on parchment that has weathered centuries. Here, the quiet struggle for survival continues. The Golden Age of Timbuktu, once defined by bustling trade, vibrant scholarship, and the meticulous copying of texts, has begun to fade, leaving in its wake a city that is both alive with memory and acutely aware of vulnerability. The manuscripts, delicate yet enduring, are both witnesses and participants in this transition, carrying within their pages the labor of those who refuse to let knowledge vanish entirely. Scholars and guardians confront a host of challenges: political instability, changing trade routes, and occasional raids have disrupted the careful networks that once ensured manuscripts were copied, stored and distributed with precision. Families that historically maintained private libraries now struggle to safeguard them, and resources for preservation are scarce. Yet, necessity breeds creativity. Guardians develop improvisational strategies to protect manuscripts from environmental and human threats. Fragile pages are wrapped in cloth, hidden in ceilings, or buried in sand during periods of unrest. Portable wooden boxes are used to transport the most vulnerable texts, while duplicate copies are made whenever possible to reduce the risk of total loss. Each adaptation is a small, deliberate intervention in a broader struggle to preserve culture against forces beyond human control. The city's scholars play a critical role in sustaining the peacelectual life of Timbuktu despite the decline. Some continue to teach in homes or small courtyards, passing knowledge to students who may otherwise lack access to formal education. Others focus on copying manuscripts, sometimes traveling to neighboring towns to ensure that texts are not lost to local hazards. Their work is painstaking and repetitive. Hours are spent transcribing each line accurately, checking the meaning of marginal notes, and preserving the context of each passage. In this, scholars act as bridges between the past and the future, their labor ensuring that knowledge is not entirely confined to fading memory or fragile parchment. Families remain key participants in this effort. Household members, often women, maintain the manuscripts, care for them, and teach younger generations the skills necessary for preservation. Meals, domestic chores, and the rhythm of daily life blend seamlessly with scholarly labor. Parchments may rest beside cooking implements or be handled between errands, yet careful attention ensures they survive. The intimate integration of knowledge preservation into everyday life highlights a fundamental truth. The survival of manuscripts depends not only on institutional structures, but on human care, embedded in routine and sustained through commitment. Despite the vigilance of scholars and families, the manuscripts themselves are fragile. Parchment darkens, ink fades, and bindings weaken with age. Environmental hazards and infiltration, humidity fluctuations, and sudden temperature extremes threaten to undo centuries of labor in moments. Political upheaval, theft, and displacement pose additional risks. Each manuscript is a delicate equilibrium preserved only through constant attention, care, and foresight. Guardians and scholars are acutely aware that survival is provisional, and that every day without attention increases the risk of irreversible loss. In this precarious landscape, decisions about what to preserve and how to prioritize limited resources become necessary. Practical texts, medical remedies, legal codes, agricultural techniques often receive the greatest attention as their value is immediate and tangible. Other texts, including poetry, philosophy, and esoteric scholarship, may be neglected or deferred, increasing the likelihood that they will vanish. These decisions reflect both necessity and human judgment, revealing how the preservation of knowledge is shaped as much by social priorities as by material constraints. The manuscripts that survive are therefore not only records of history, but artifacts of human decision-making, carrying implicit stories about what past communities valued most. Travelers and merchants continue to play a role in the survival of manuscripts, albeit in subtler ways than during the city's peak. They sometimes transport texts to safer regions or distant libraries, acting as informal conduits for knowledge. A manuscript might be copied in Timbuktu and then carried hundreds of miles across the Sahara, its contents reaching new audiences and securing a second chance at survival. This network, informal and often invisible, demonstrates how knowledge persisted not solely within libraries but through human mobility, social networks, and the quiet vigilance of those who understood the stakes of preservation. Amid these challenges, hope persists. Guardians, scholars, and families continue their labor, motivated not by recognition but by an understanding of the fragility and value of the manuscripts. Each line transcribed, each page repaired, and each text carefully stored represents a victory against entropy, a small triumph over both natural and human threats. The manuscripts themselves, resting on shelves or hidden in ceilings, are living witnesses to this resilience, embodying centuries of human dedication and the enduring importance of knowledge. They are fragile, yet they endure, a testament to both the vulnerability and persistence of culture. And yet, uncertainty remains. How many manuscripts will survive to the next generation? How many will succumb quietly to neglect, environmental damage, or conflict? The fading of Timbuktu's golden age is a gradual, almost imperceptible process, marked by both loss and the quiet persistence of those who care for knowledge. Every surviving manuscript represents not only information preserved, but a link to human effort, judgment, and resilience, a fragile thread connecting the city's vibrant past to an uncertain future. As night falls over Timbuktu, the city is quieter than in its heyday. Yet life continues in small, deliberate acts of preservation. Guardians inspect manuscripts, scholars continue to copy texts, and families maintain what remains of their private collections. Each action, seemingly small, accumulates over decades and centuries, ensuring that fragments of the Golden Age endure. And in these quiet acts, you see the paradox of survival. The fading of an era is inevitable. Yet human labor, patience, and care allow ideas, words, and knowledge to persist far longer than any single generation could anticipate. And so, our journey through the quiet corners of history comes to a pause. The workshops, the libraries, the hands that labored patiently, they remain in memory. Even as centuries pass and the world continues to change, remember, the significance of history often lies not in grand events, but in the small, persistent acts of care, curiosity, and human resilience. As you rest, carry these quiet stories with you, allowing the calm rhythms of the past to linger. And when you wake, perhaps you will glimpse, even briefly, the enduring power of ordinary moments that shaped our world. Thank you for joining us in Boring Past Times for Sleep. Until the next quiet journey, may your thoughts drift gently like candlelight across ancient parchment.